my friends are simps.
It's me, I'm back. You probably didn't even realise that I was away, to be honest. But I have been. I've been away playing gigs all over the joint and generally been something of an international man of mystery. However, rumours of my demise have been greatly exaggerated, though it has genuinely been quite a while since I put together a good old-fashioned synthesizer video. And so today I've returned with something of a bang, taking a look at a very special instrument indeed, the Solar 42F, from Elta Music. Yeah, that's the one. This is easily one of the most unique and interesting synthesizers that I have ever managed to get my grubby paws on, but I have to tell you, this is not a sponsored video, and I guess rather unfortunately, this beautiful machine behind me is also not mine. This particular Solar belongs to my good friend Lee, who you might recognise from my various live tour diaries in the past. If not, you should go watch them. But me and Lee have gotten into all sorts of trouble together in the past, and I blackmailed him into giving me a loan of his beautiful Solar. So big thanks to him for kowtowing to my demands, and you should also, I guess, go check out his YouTube channel, which, you know, I'll be linked in all the places, you know how it works. So onto the synthesizer itself. The Solar 42F is an experimental analog drone synthesizer, an all-round ambient dream machine, though to be honest, that description probably doesn't really do it justice for reasons that will hopefully become clear throughout the course of this video, and I guess part of the reason that you're watching it. For those of you that are curious, and I know you all are about this kind of thing, the Solar 42F is an evolution of and ostensibly an upgrade from the earlier Solar 42, with a number of small improvements in areas like, I don't know, the UI, the type of switches that have been used and all that kind of thing. But the main components are all there and all the same. For the sake of ease, and also because I'm a lazy bastard, I'll probably just be referring to this as the Solar or the Solar 42, as opposed to the full Solar 42F. But from now on, if I say any of that, just be aware that I'm specifically talking about the Solar 42F. Right off the bat, I do have to address the elephant in the room and warn you that this is a premium instrument from a small independent company, and so you know what's coming. It has a premium price tag to match. I'm not going to tell you what that price tag is because it will change and I can't be bothered with the currency, you know, transfers and all that kind of stuff, but you can look it up on your own. Be prepared to sit down or perhaps just feign indifference if you happen to earn lots of money. But either way, what I want to tell you, the whole reason I'm giving you this spiel is that this is not a sponsored video, and so I guess I can tell you what I think of it pretty honestly, so you can trust me, at least on this. The truth is that by as purely objective a standard as I am able to utilise, you do actually get quite a lot for your money, even though this is expensive. And for a particular type of person, this could well be their dream synthesizer. But that is for a particular type of person looking for a particular type of thing, so bear all of that in mind whilst we go through this video, and try not let your rage at the price tag get the better of you. Or do. Just comment below because it helps me out anyway, so I don't care. Considered purely as a physical form or being, the Solar 42F is truly beautiful, and I say that with no hint of sarcasm at all. All of the various component parts are laid out in this functionally logical but also very aesthetically pleasing manner, and I obviously care about aesthetics, in case you couldn't tell. There's a few different coloured options available, including black, white, green and yellow, I believe, but I have to say that I think the pink looks especially good. As you might expect, the synth also feels incredibly well made, with an all-metal body and quality parts, at least as far as I can tell anyway. The whole thing runs on standard 12-volt DC power and has got stereo audio output on a pair of 1/4-inch jacks, as well as an external audio input to let you run various signals through its effects and envelope follower. The synth does have quite a large desktop footprint, as you can probably tell, and is about the same size, or in fact a bit wider, than something like a Vermona Performer, or perhaps an MPC 2500, which, you know, I could gesture to, but it is out of frame. But, you know, it's not as tall or as bulky as either of those devices, which are not known for being very small. Despite being pretty big though, it does somehow still feel like it is kind of portable, and I can't really figure out why. Perhaps it's just because the cardboard box has got a handle on it, but you know, bulky, but you could take it to a gig. Most importantly, perhaps for an instrument of this type and cost, it just feels really nice to use. It invites you to interact and play with it, and it rewards you for doing so. It encourages experimentation, and it works really, really well for the exploration and creation of big cinematic style soundscapes. You might well dismiss all of this lyrical waxing as some kind of desperate post-purchase justification, but remember, I didn't buy this thing, so I guess maybe it's easy for me to say, having spent no money on it, but I do come away from sessions with the Solar feeling kind of uplifted in this sort of indescribable way, and that's before I've had a bottle of whiskey, so, you know, you can take that into account as well, but ultimately, this is just a really, really lovely machine to make sounds with, which I think is kind of the whole point, right? Now, the Solar can definitely be overwhelming when you first look at it, thanks to the sheer number of knobs and buttons that are on there. However, when you realise that it is just made up of a number of discrete blocks, then it isn't nearly as difficult to understand as it might initially appear, kind of like, you know, a mixing desk when you first see it or something like that. However, it does still also have quite a lot going on. On that note, going into everything that this synth does in detail would require a much longer video than I am prepared to make. So my goal with the following section is to give you something of a kind of high-level overview of the main features and give you a better idea of what it's all about, so that you can lust over it and hover your finger over the buy it now button for the next 12 months, or, you know, just talk about how radically overpriced it is. You know, the choice is yours. At its core, Solar is made up of 8 different voices. 6 of these are drones, and 2 of them are more fully featured voltage controllable VCOs. You know what those are. The drone voices are split into 2 groups, which each have got a distinct set of controls, though again, it's important to note that none of these have got 1 volt per octave inputs or anything like that, because, well, they're drones after all. The first group of these drone voices includes 4 of the 6 drone voices, and these have each got 5 basic sawtooth oscillators. They can be individually tuned, muted or modulated, either by a shared CV input or the rather unusual photosensitive eye, which I think looks something like a weird jellyfish or something like that. You can transpose down the pitch of all of the oscillators in a single drone voice simultaneously with a volt knob, which at a certain point also produces some weird FM style effects. And In addition to this, there's also an output jack, which lets you use the envelope of each drone voice to trigger other elements, like pinging the filter or setting up chains of cascading envelopes, which is pretty cool. The other two remaining drone voices are based on a different design to the first four, with their own distinct features, including a noise generator, sample and hold, as well as some more complex AM, FM modulation that I won't pretend to understand, never mind be able to say clearly. All of the 6 voices have each got a basic attack release envelope, which is triggered either with the keypad style buttons on the bottom right of the Solar or via gate input, though you can always bypass the envelope entirely and have the drone on, well, droning constantly with the hold button, and that is pretty useful for tuning, but also for layering up different textures. The main 2 voices of Solar are more traditional triangle core oscillators with a variety of different waveform shapes which can be morphed between them, if that makes sense. They've each got their own accompanying ADSR envelope and can be controlled either with a built-in keyboard or with the CV and gate inputs, meaning that you can use external sequencers to have 2 voices at once. These are more fully featured than you might expect, and you can get a pretty good range of sounds from them, especially when you start experimenting with the FM input, sync and pulse wave modulation options. The most natural and immediate way of playing the 2 main controllable voices is with the built-in high-quality touch capacitive keyboard. This comes with a host of configuration options, including different splits, portamento, transposition, arpeggiation, scale quantization, and even a 16-step software-based sequencer. There's also various connection points to input and output various control voltage signals like clock, volt per octave, gate, etc, etc. In addition to the software-based sequencer, there's also a 5-stage Buchla-style analog sequencer, which has got switchable stages, and this is great fun to experiment and play about with on the fly. Thanks to the amount of patch points on here, you can also pair up Solar with something like Doxy 1, which, with all of its various CV and gate outputs, can really level up the complexity of your sequences even further. All of the Solar's audio signals, including the external input, are routed through a stereo mixer with individual controls over volume and panning. Now, drones on their own are good fun to play about with, right? But to avoid them just becoming some kind of god-awful robot bagpipe orchestra, you really need to slather them in a host of different effects, or at least I do anyway. So to allow for this, Solar uses a cartridge-style system where you get 13 different types of effects that are stored on these wee doodads that you plug in. They are hot swappable, meaning that you can pull cartridges out and put new ones in and load in different effects on the fly, and each channel can have a totally different effect applied from the other one. Yeah, this is pretty cool, right? Because it lets you combine all of that with the CV control that you get over the various parameters for loads and loads of different possibilities. But I do have to say, in stereo, it can get a wee bit discombobulating at times if you, for example, load up a reverb on one channel and a delay in the right or something like that. So it can take a wee bit of experimentation just to get the balance right. Or, I don't know, just embrace the chaos if that's what you prefer. In addition to the main stereo mixdown of Solar, there's also separate dry outputs for the 2 main VCOs, one which is pre and one post envelope. And this opens up all sorts of other possibilities because you can then duplicate these with, say, a buffered multiple, for example, or just, a passive multiple if you're cheap like me, and then run them through all sorts of different external effects for more deeply layered multi-track recordings. For example, I played about with my Space Echo, which again, you can't see, it's over here somewhere, which was quite nice. It was quite nice indeed. Now, a synthesizer like this wouldn't be complete without some kind of filter, and Solar 42F comes with a double left-right 12 decibel Polyvox style filter with loads of parameters and CV control over the filter cutoff. Now, to create beautifully big and evolving soundscapes, everyone knows that you need to have a lot of modulation, and this is something that Solar provides in spades. There are two LFOs with varying speeds, a video game style joystick with patchable X and Y axes, a contact mic, an envelope follower, which I've mentioned already, and all sorts of patch points strewn about the place for various parameters. There really is quite a lot to explore in here and get your cinematic juices flowing, if you will. To be completely honest, when I first started playing about with Solar, I really didn't get it at all. I just didn't get it. Rather than coming up with anything musical, it all just kind of seemed like an overly complicated way to make a lot of discordant noise. More discordant noise than my music usually is. However, quickly I realised that I was approaching this far too much like a modular synthesizer, when in fact it isn't a modular synthesizer. Well, you know, not really anyway. I guess at risk of perhaps stating the bloody obvious, Solar is an ambient performance drone machine, and once I began to think of it that way, it really kind of opened up. I think by that I mean that rather than trying to first figure out signal flow and all that kind of thing in a methodical manner like I would with Eurorack, or at least I like to think I would with Eurorack, I started just to play a basic arpeggiation with a keyboard. I let that repeat and then one by one tuned the various drone voices to pleasing intervals. From there it was kind of just a matter of triggering them with a keypad, dialing up the effects, playing about with a mixer, and before I knew it, I found myself in some kind of dreamy sonic heaven. In many ways, the experience of playing with the Solar is very similar to something like the Lyra 8, where every time I sit down with it, I start off feeling like I'm just fumbling around in the dark and inevitably wonder why I ever liked the damn thing in the first place. But once you invest a wee bit of time, tweak the tuning and parameters, it all suddenly just clicks into place, and you do end up swept along in the sounds and the textures that evolve organically. My personal favourite way to use the Solar has been to have these sessions where I just enjoy the experimentation and get lost in what comes up. But I will always usually synchronise, or at least record, things to a particular tempo so that later on I can go back and chop up the various sections or layer them with drums for more, I guess, fully realised bits of music. I'm not really a big ambient guy, right? So I always feel the urge to just whack a big fucking kick drum on there or something. And that isn't really going to change anytime soon, so that's what I've been doing. As I mentioned earlier, this can seem like quite a complicated instrument, but once you get over that initial conceptual hump and get a feel for it and understand that it is an instrument, then you can really start to explore the possibilities that are offered by all of the various components and bits in there, and also appreciate just how well thought out, how versatile, and how feature-packed this thing actually is, as well as perhaps why you know, perhaps why it carries the price tag that it does. Will that mean that this is something you should run out and buy? Well, no, not necessarily. In fact, probably not. And that's actually fine. You don't have to, you know, even if you want to. To sum up, I have to be honest and say that this is not really a synthesizer that I personally would ever have bought for myself. The price tag is just that bit too high for something that doesn't really fit into the type of music that I normally produce, or indeed the music that I enjoy. However, I'm glad I got the chance to play about with one because it really is quite an inspiring instrument. And for folks that love creating those big textural soundscapes, or I don't know, even just dropping a tab of acid and sitting there for hours, swirling it around in sonic beauty, I guess, this could be exactly what you're looking for. Though don't quote me on that. Never quote me.